My name is Jake, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a graphic designer, spending most of my time creating digital art and designing visuals for clients. On the surface, my life looks pretty normal: steady job, creative passion, nothing too dramatic. But beneath that calm exterior, there's a reality I've struggled with for as long as I can remember. Being the middle child in a family of 5 feels like living life on mute. My parents, Mark and Linda, are your classic hardworking couple who have always provided for us. My older sister Emily, 31, is the golden child, smart, successful, and always celebrated. Then there's my younger brother Ryan, 22, the baby of the family, who gets away with everything. And then there's me, Jake, the one in the middle, often left unnoticed. Growing up, it felt like Emily's achievements were celebrated with endless family dinners and praise, while Ryan's screw-ups were brushed off with a "boys will be boys" smile. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, worked hard, and tried not to let the lack of acknowledgement get to me. One time, I scored the winning goal in a soccer game, and when I came home bursting with pride, Emily was already announcing her college scholarship, and Ryan had just broken his arm from a bike accident. My victory didn't stand a chance. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that I was just being overly sensitive. But moments like that kept piling up. Family gatherings were filled with chatter about Emily's promotion or Ryan's latest party, while my words seemed to evaporate mid-sentence. It wasn't hate, just neglect, like I was an extra piece of furniture in the room. I kept telling myself it was no big deal, until the week that changed everything. It was supposed to be a chance for all of us to spend time together, a rare week at my parents' house. I was cautiously optimistic, especially because my birthday would fall right in the middle. I figured, finally, no excuses, they'll remember this time. But as the week approached, I got a sinking feeling. No one mentioned it, not even casually. On the morning of my birthday, I walked downstairs, expecting at least a quick "Happy birthday!" Instead, I got nothing. My mom greeted me with a casual "Good morning, Jake," without even a second glance, while Emily scrolled on her phone and Ryan recounted his latest party adventure. It was just another day for them. That night at dinner was the final straw. I asked someone to pass the salt twice. Nothing. I looked around, realizing they were completely immersed in their conversations, as if I didn't exist. Something inside me snapped. I excused myself, went upstairs, and for the first time in years, I let the anger sink in. I had spent so long convincing myself that it didn't hurt, but it did, more than I wanted to admit. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, then fine. I'd show them exactly what it felt like to be ignored. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination that felt foreign yet empowering. If they wanted to act like I was invisible, then fine. I would lean into it, and see just how far their indifference would go. I wasn't going to make it easy for them to ignore me, though. No more trying to engage or hoping they'd notice me. Instead, I was going to test just how deep this rabbit hole of neglect went. I started with something simple. When I left the house for a quick walk, I left the front door wide open. I thought for sure someone would notice. An open door isn't exactly subtle. I wandered down the street, took a long, slow lap around the block, and even stopped to chat with a neighbor about their new dog. When I finally headed back, my heart sank a bit as I approached the house. The door was still wide open, just as I had left it. No one had bothered to close it. When I walked inside, it was like I had never left. Emily was on the couch scrolling through her phone, Ryan was blasting his video game, and my parents were discussing their grocery list in the kitchen. I stood there for a moment, just watching them, half expecting one of them to say something like, "Hey, why was the door open?" But there was nothing, no reaction, not even a glance. A strange mixture of sadness and triumph settled in my chest. On one hand, I had proven my theory. They were so disconnected from me that they didn't even notice something as obvious as the door being left ajar. On the other hand, it hurt. It hurt more than I thought it would. Still, I wasn't ready to give up. Next, I turned my attention to noise. Back in my old room, I turned up my music louder than usual, loud enough that it should have made someone come upstairs to tell me to turn it down. I even made a point of stomping around as I walked back and forth, letting my footsteps echo through the house. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Still nothing. I sat on my bed, trying to wrap my head around it. Was I really that insignificant? Was I just imagining it, or were they truly going out of their way to pretend I wasn't there? A part of me wanted to go downstairs and confront them, but I wasn't ready, not yet. I needed more proof. That evening at dinner, I decided to take a more direct approach. I tried engaging them in conversation, just to see if I could break the pattern. I started with Ryan, asking him about the party he'd been bragging about earlier. He gave me a one-word answer without even looking up from his plate. I turned to Emily, asking how her new project was going. She shrugged and immediately redirected the conversation to something their mom had cooked earlier in the week. I felt the frustration boiling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to know for sure. So I tried one more time, this time directing a question to both my parents. Hey, do you remember when we used to have those game nights every Friday? Whatever happened to that? My dad barely glanced up. Schedules got busy, I guess, he mumbled before turning back to his plate. My mom didn't even respond. It was like they were in a completely different world, one where I didn't exist. After dinner, I took my plate to the sink and noticed a small puddle of water on the kitchen floor. Instead of cleaning it up, I left it there, curious if anyone would bother to notice. Hours later, it was still there, even though everyone had passed through the kitchen at some point. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had spent my whole life trying to be seen, being the good son, the supportive brother, the one who didn't make waves. And yet, here I was, literally invisible. A small voice inside me whispered that maybe it was my fault. Maybe I hadn't been loud enough about my own needs, too focused on keeping the peace to ever really stand out. But deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. A family is supposed to notice you, even when you're not making noise. A family is supposed to care without being reminded. And right now, mine seemed incapable of even the most basic acknowledgement. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't break down or let the sadness consume me. I would stay strong, and if they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, I'd make them see just how it felt. If they thought ignoring me was some kind of game, I was about to play it better than they ever could. By the third day, I was starting to lose patience. I had done everything I could think of to get their attention without being direct. I'd left doors open, made loud noises, even tried to engage in conversation, all to no avail. It was like I was truly invisible to them. A part of me wanted to scream, to force them to acknowledge me, but I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. If they were ignoring me on purpose, I was going to make them feel it. I wasn't about to let them pretend that I was the problem. Instead, I would give them a taste of their own medicine. No more tests. No more attempts to get noticed. I was done. From that moment on, I decided I'd play the role of the ghost. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw Emily and Ryan chatting over breakfast. Usually, I'd make some small comment, or at least acknowledge their presence. Not today. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down, and didn't even look in their direction. Emily glanced at me, expecting a greeting, but I just stirred my coffee and sipped in silence. Ryan looked over as if to say something, but then shrugged and went back to his toast. The change in their demeanor was subtle at first, just a flicker of confusion. They weren't used to me being quiet, to me not trying to join in. Usually, I'd make the effort to blend into their conversations, even if I was mostly ignored. Not anymore. When my mom came in to make breakfast, I stayed put, sipping my coffee without offering to help. Normally, I'd be the one setting the table or slicing fruit. She looked at me, slightly puzzled, but didn't comment. I just sat there, feeling oddly liberated by my newfound silence. Ryan was the first to snap. After I ignored his attempt to show me a funny meme, he threw his phone down with a loud huff. "What's your problem, Jake?" he muttered under his breath. I didn't respond, just kept sipping my coffee. Emily raised an eyebrow but didn't press the issue. Throughout the day, I maintained the same indifferent attitude. When my mom asked me to help with the groceries, I acted like I hadn't heard her. When my dad asked me to check his laptop for a tech issue, I just nodded vaguely and never got around to it. The more I pulled back, the more their confusion grew. By dinner time, the tension in the house was palpable. My parents kept exchanging worried glances, clearly trying to figure out what was going on. Emily seemed annoyed, while Ryan just looked baffled. I kept up the act, eating in silence, not reacting to any of their stories or jokes. Finally, as we were clearing the table, Emily couldn't hold it in any longer. She practically slammed her plate into the sink and turned to face me, hands on her hips. "What's going on with you? You're acting like a total jerk," she snapped. I just looked at her, completely expressionless, and walked out of the room. I could hear them murmuring behind me as I went upstairs. Part of me wanted to run back down and confront them, demand to know why they thought I didn't deserve the same consideration they gave each other. But I held back. I wanted them to stew in the silence, to feel just a fraction of the loneliness I'd felt for years. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the day's events. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I had finally disrupted the status quo, finally made them realize something was wrong. But at the same time, I hated that it had come to this. I didn't want to be petty. I didn't want to ignore them. I just wanted them to see me. To acknowledge that I mattered. The next morning, I kept up the act. I didn't respond when Emily asked me to pass the syrup at breakfast. When Ryan tried to get me to play video games with him, I just shrugged and walked away. The more I ignored them, the more agitated they became. My parents finally cornered me in the hallway that evening. My mom looked genuinely concerned. "Jake, honey, what's going on? You've been so distant," she said softly. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, but his face softened. I just looked at them, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to unload everything right then and there. How I felt invisible, how I was tired of always being in the background. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed them to feel what I had felt for so long. So I just shook my head and walked past them, leaving them standing there in confusion. As I closed my bedroom door behind me, I couldn't help but wonder if I was doing the right thing. Was this how I wanted to handle it? Was there even a better way? But then I remembered that birthday morning, the way they barely glanced at me, the way no one noticed I hadn't spoken all day. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing it to make them understand. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. By the fourth day of my self-imposed silence, I could feel the tension in the house like a thick, suffocating fog. My family was unsettled by my sudden transformation from the usually quiet but agreeable middle child to a full-on mute. I knew they were growing increasingly frustrated, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. But I wasn't ready to back down. Not yet. Emily was the first to crack. That evening, as I sat on the living room couch, scrolling through my phone, she marched in and stood directly in front of me, blocking the screen. Her arms were crossed, and her face was a mix of anger and confusion. "What is your deal, Jake?" she demanded, her voice louder than usual. I glanced up at her, and then shifted my gaze back to my phone without a word. She let out an exaggerated sigh and dropped onto the couch beside me. "You're being ridiculous. You've been sulking for days. Are you mad about something? Because honestly, it's getting old." I kept my face neutral, even though I could feel my pulse quicken. The temptation to just explode and unload everything on her was almost overwhelming. But I knew better. I had to stay calm, let her feel the weight of her own words. When I didn't respond, Emily huffed and muttered, "Whatever," before stomping off to her room. I could hear her venting to Ryan, telling him how I was acting like a moody child, for no reason. Ryan's reaction was different. Instead of getting angry, he tried the opposite approach. Later that evening, he knocked on my door and poked his head in. "Hey, Jake. Want to play some Call of Duty? You always kick my ass at that game." His tone was light, almost hopeful. For a split second, I almost gave in. Playing games with Ryan used to be our thing, one of the few times I felt like a normal part of the family. But I couldn't let myself get comfortable. Not yet. I just shook my head without saying a word. He hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "All right, man. Suit yourself." I could hear the disappointment in his voice, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about making them feel bad. It was about making them realize how it felt to be disregarded. My parents' reactions were more complicated. My mom tried to get me to talk while I was fixing the Wi-Fi router in the living room. "Jake, you've been so quiet lately. Is something bothering you? You know you can talk to us, right?" I wanted to scream. "Why now? Why only when I stop talking do you finally notice something is wrong? But I just shrugged and kept working on the router. My dad walked in, glanced at me fiddling with the wires, and asked, "You got it handled?" I gave a quick nod, not looking up. He muttered something to my mom, and they walked back into the kitchen. That night, I overheard my parents talking about me. My mom's voice was hushed but concerned. "I don't know what's going on with Jake. He's never been this withdrawn before. Did something happen at work?" My dad, ever the practical one, said, "Maybe he's just stressed. Or tired of being around all of us? He'll snap out of it." I felt a pang of sadness hearing that. They still didn't get it. They thought this was just a phase or a mood swing. They couldn't see that this was the culmination of years of feeling like I didn't matter. The next morning, things took a turn. My mom made breakfast and set an extra plate for me, even though I usually grabbed something quick on my own. When I sat down, she gave me a hopeful smile. "Pancakes. Your favorite," she said, sliding the plate toward me. I nodded, muttering a quiet, "Thanks," but nothing more. My dad looked up from his newspaper, clearly trying to gauge my mood. Emily walked in, took one look at the setup, and rolled her eyes. "Oh, so we're just gonna pretend he's not being a brat," she scoffed. Ryan, surprisingly, shot back. "Maybe if we listened to him once in a while, he wouldn't have to act like this." That caught everyone off guard, including me. Emily gave him a sharp look, and my parents exchanged glances, clearly not expecting Ryan to take my side. My heart pounded in my chest. Did he get it? Was I finally breaking through to at least one of them? I wanted to turn around and hug him, but I stayed silent, keeping up my stoic act. That evening, after dinner, I heard Ryan talking to Emily in the hallway. "Look, maybe we've been kind of jerks to Jake. I don't know. But he's always the one making things easy for everyone, and maybe he's just tired of it. Have you ever thought about that?" Emily's response was muffled, but I could hear the reluctance in her tone. I guess. But why does he have to make it so dramatic?" Ryan didn't reply, and I couldn't help but feel a small flicker of hope. Maybe Ryan was starting to see it, the years of being overlooked, the constant feeling of being less important. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and fear. Had I done enough to get through to them? Or was I just creating more distance? Part of me worried that this experiment would backfire, that they'd just write me off as being overly sensitive. But at that moment I didn't regret it. I needed them to feel what I had felt, just once. If I had to be the bad guy to make them understand, then so be it. I wasn't going to go back to being invisible. By the 5th day, the atmosphere in the house was tense enough to cut with a knife. My silence had turned from a minor inconvenience into a full-blown mystery. My parents seemed more and more anxious, trying to decode my behavior without actually asking me directly. Emily and Ryan had taken different approaches, Emily acting annoyed, Ryan showing hints of guilt. That evening, it all came to a head. We were sitting around the dinner table, eating in near silence. Usually, this was the time where Emily would brag about her latest work project, or Ryan would share some ridiculous story about his friends. Instead, we ate with nothing but the clinking of silverware to break the silence. Suddenly, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She slammed her hand on the table, making the plates rattle. "All right, enough," she snapped. "Jake, what the hell is your problem? You've been acting like a child all week. Ignoring everyone, sulking around. Are you seriously this petty?" Her voice was loud and sharp, slicing through the tension like a knife. I took a deep breath, put down my fork, and for the first time in days, I looked her directly in the eyes. "Stop what?" I asked calmly. "This," she exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. "This whole ignoring act. You're being a total jerk, and for what? Just because you didn't get enough attention one day?" My mom tried to interject, but I wasn't about to let Emily hijack the conversation. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice low but steady. Emily scoffed. "What's there to get? You're throwing a tantrum because we didn't throw you a parade on your birthday?" I felt something snap inside me, and before I could stop myself, the words came tumbling out. "It's not just my birthday, Emily. It's everything. It's every single day of my life when I'm treated like I don't matter. You think this is just about one day? You're wrong. This has been building for years. You wouldn't know what it's like because you've always been the center of attention. Emily's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. You, Ryan, Mom, Dad, you all act like I'm just, here. An extra. A placeholder between Emily's success and Ryan's screw-ups. I've spent years trying to be good enough, trying to fit in, and no matter what I do, it's never enough to get noticed. My dad looked shocked, and my mom covered her mouth, her eyes wide. I could see Ryan shifting uncomfortably, guilt washing over his face. Emily finally stammered. Jake, it's not like that. You're just... I'm just what? I cut her off. Quiet? Not flashy enough? I didn't ask to be the middle child, but it's like I'm automatically less important because of it. You've been praised and babied your whole lives, and I've been trying to keep the peace while feeling like I don't even exist. Ryan, surprisingly, spoke up. Dude, I didn't know you felt like that. You never said anything. I scoffed. How could I? Anytime I tried to talk, someone would cut me off. Or I'd get brushed aside because something more important came up. I learned to just keep it to myself because it felt like no one wanted to hear it anyway. The room fell silent. My mom wiped a tear from her cheek, and my dad looked down, his brow furrowed. Emily looked genuinely taken aback, like she had just seen me for the first time. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, I said more softly, the adrenaline draining from my body. I just want you to understand what it's been like. Feeling invisible, it hurts. And I'm tired of pretending it doesn't. For a long moment, no one spoke. My dad finally cleared his throat, his voice quiet and strained. Son, we didn't know. I guess we've just been caught up in everything else. That doesn't excuse it. I'm sorry. My mom nodded, her voice shaky. Jake, I'm so sorry too. I never realized how much we've been neglecting you. I guess I took it for granted that you were okay because you never complained. Emily looked down, visibly shaken. I didn't mean to make you feel like that, she whispered. I never thought about it from your side. Ryan bit his lip, looking genuinely remorseful. I've been a jerk, haven't I? I just nodded, not trusting my voice anymore. It felt surreal, like finally peeling back years of hurt and exposing it all at once. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or just sad that it took this long for them to notice. My dad leaned forward, his tone firm but kind. We're going to do better, Jake. I promise. We're not perfect, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try harder. You matter. You always have. It was a small comfort, but it was something. I gave a weak nod, feeling like a massive weight had been lifted, even though the ache was still there. That night, as I lay in bed, I wondered if things would change. Part of me was still guarded, not ready to believe that one conversation could fix years of neglect. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like they saw me, like I wasn't just a shadow passing through the room. The morning after that intense confrontation felt different. Lighter somehow. I woke up feeling drained but also strangely hopeful. Part of me still doubted whether the change would last, but at least I'd finally been heard. For the first time in years, I had made them listen. When I walked downstairs, the atmosphere was noticeably calmer. My mom greeted me with a soft, tentative smile. Good morning, Jake. I made some of those blueberry pancakes you like, she said, gesturing to the stack on the counter. I nodded and managed a small thanks. She looked almost relieved just to hear me speak. As I sat down, I noticed Emily in the living room, flipping through a magazine. She glanced over and gave me an awkward, uncertain wave. It was like they were all walking on eggshells, unsure of how to approach me now that they knew the truth. I wasn't used to this much attention, and honestly it made me a bit uncomfortable. Ryan wandered in next, giving me a quick nod. Hey, you want to play some games later? He asked, scratching his head like he wasn't sure if the offer would be accepted. I hesitated, not wanting to rush back into old habits. Maybe, I replied, keeping it vague. His shoulders sagged a bit, but he didn't push. During breakfast, Emily sat down at the table with me. She didn't say much, just sipped her coffee while sneaking glances my way. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she finally spoke. You know, I didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter, she mumbled. I guess I just never noticed. I thought you were fine because you never complained. I looked at her, trying to gauge whether she was being sincere. Her face was softer than usual, less guarded. It's not just about complaining, I said quietly. It's about feeling like I'm never seen. Like no matter what I do, I'm just there. Emily nodded slowly. I get it. I do. I'm sorry, Jake. I should have noticed sooner. We didn't hug or have a big, emotional moment. But the simple acknowledgement was enough to make me feel like maybe things could get better. Later that day, my dad asked for help fixing the old lawn mower. Normally, I'd just hold the tools while he did the work, but this time, he explained what he was doing step by step. This part here is tricky. You've got to get the belt just right, or it'll slip, he said, guiding my hand as I adjusted the tension. It wasn't much, but it felt significant, like he was trying to include me instead of just using me as a spare pair of hands. Ryan made another effort that evening. He knocked on my bedroom door, an actual knock, not just barging in like he usually did. Hey, Jake, he started hesitantly. I downloaded that new game you were talking about last month. Thought you might want to try it with me. I was surprised. Ryan had never taken much interest in what I liked before. I agreed, and we spent a few hours laughing and cursing at the screen as we tried to figure out the game's mechanics. It wasn't much, but it was more effort than I was used to from him. My mom was more cautious. She'd check on me every few hours, asking if I needed anything or just making sure I was okay. At one point, I caught her watching me from the doorway, her expression a mix of guilt and relief. A few days later, we all ended up in the living room together. It was one of those rare moments when no one had plans or distractions. Emily was flipping channels, Ryan was texting, and I was sketching in my notebook. My mom suddenly spoke up. We should do a game night, she said. Everyone looked at her like she'd suggested we build a rocket. Game nights had been a tradition years ago, but they slowly faded as everyone got busier. Seriously? Emily asked, half intrigued, half skeptical. Yes, Mom insisted. We haven't done it in ages. I think it would be good for us. Ryan shrugged. Sure, why not? Emily hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, okay. I didn't say much, just kept sketching, but a small smile tugged at my lips. Game nights had always been one of the few times I felt like a part of the family. If they wanted to bring it back, I wasn't going to argue. When the evening rolled around, my dad dug out the dusty old board games from the hall closet. We set up in the living room, arguing over which game to play first. We settled on Monopoly, and for the first time in a long while, I laughed with them. Emily made snarky comments about Ryan's terrible property choices, and my mom tried to negotiate her way into the boardwalk spot. My dad cheated blatantly, pretending not to notice when he, accidentally, collected extra cash from the bank. By the end of the night, the tension had eased, replaced by something that felt almost normal. I knew it wasn't a perfect fix. Years of feeling overlooked wouldn't disappear overnight. But this was a start, something to build on. When I headed upstairs to my room, Ryan stopped me in the hallway. Hey, Jake, he said, his tone serious. I'm glad you're not mad anymore. I didn't mean to ignore you, you know? I looked at him, not sure how to respond. I'm not mad, Ryan. I wanted you to know what it felt like. Being invisible sucks. He nodded, looking a bit ashamed. I get it now. I'll try to be better. Promise. As I closed my door behind me, I couldn't help but feel cautiously optimistic. They were trying. It wasn't perfect, and I knew there would be setbacks, but at least they had acknowledged the problem. At least now they saw me. That night, for the first time in a long while, I went to sleep with a sense of hope. Maybe I didn't have to be invisible anymore. Over the next few weeks, things started to change, slowly but noticeably. My family didn't suddenly become perfect or hyper-attentive, but there was a definite shift in how they interacted with me. It was like the confrontation had flipped a switch, making them realize that I wasn't just a fixture in the background, but someone who needed attention and acknowledgement, too. Emily started including me in more conversations, even asking for my input on things she usually handled alone. One afternoon, she knocked on my door, an actual knock, not just barging in, and asked me to look over an email draft for work. You're good with wording stuff, she admitted, handing me her phone. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd ever expected from her. Ryan, true to his promise, made an effort to hang out more. Instead of assuming I'd just go along with his plans, he asked what I wanted to do. One evening, he asked if I wanted to watch a new action movie with him. "Your pick this time," he said with a sheepish grin. We ended up laughing through the whole film, making dumb commentary and pointing out plot holes. It was the most fun we'd had together in years. My parents also took small but significant steps. My mom started checking in with me more often, not in an overbearing way, but just enough to show that she cared about my day-to-day life. She even asked me to teach her some basic design skills on my laptop. At first, it was painfully awkward, but we eventually got into a rhythm, and I found myself enjoying the time we spent together. My dad, on the other hand, took a different approach. One weekend, he suggested we work on fixing up the old car in the garage. It was a long, greasy project, but he took the time to show me how to handle the engine repairs instead of just expecting me to hand him tools. It felt good, like he was finally treating me as an equal rather than just the extra set of hands. One night during dinner, Emily brought up something that caught me completely off guard. "We should make Jake's birthday a bigger deal next year," she said suddenly, her tone casual but sincere. My parents both nodded, and Ryan chimed in. "Yeah, like a proper party or something. To make up for. I couldn't help but smile. It was weird hearing them talk about my birthday with actual enthusiasm. Usually, it was just an afterthought, but now they were planning, wanting to do it right. Later that night, as I was cleaning up in the kitchen, my mom came up beside me and started drying dishes. She hesitated before speaking, almost like she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. "Jake," she started softly, "I just want you to know that we're trying. It's not going to be perfect all at once, but we're going to do better." I gave her a small smile, still not completely used to this newfound awareness. "I know, Mom. I appreciate it. I need it to be real, Not just because I made a fuss." She put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. "It is real. We just forgot how to pay attention. You've always been so steady. I guess we just assumed you were okay." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was something. Acknowledging that they took me for granted was a start, and I couldn't ask for more than that at the moment. A few days later, I found myself thinking about how much had changed. It wasn't just that my family was trying harder, it was that I was finally willing to speak up when I felt overlooked. I had spent so long staying quiet to keep the peace that I hadn't realized how much it was costing me. Now that I had finally broken the silence, it was like a door had opened, one that I wasn't planning to close again. One evening, we all sat in the living room for another game night. Emily was being overly competitive, as usual, and Ryan was attempting to cheat in the most obvious ways. My parents were laughing at his failed attempts, and I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I finally felt like I was part of the picture, not just an extra in the background. Before bed, Ryan stopped by my room, leaning against the doorframe. "Hey, Jake," he said, looking a bit awkward. I didn't get it before." "How you felt?" "I just thought you didn't care about any of it. But I get it now. I was kind of an ass." I laughed, partly out of relief. "Yeah, you kind of were," I teased, and he smirked back. "But I get it. You didn't know." He looked a bit more serious then. "I know now. And I'm not gonna just forget this. I mean it." That small reassurance meant more than I could express. I just nodded, and he gave me a quick wave before heading off to his room. As I lay down that night, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Things weren't magically fixed, and I knew there would be times when I'd still feel a bit overlooked. But now I knew I could speak up. I didn't have to stay quiet just to keep the peace. I didn't have to pretend everything was okay when it wasn't. Sometimes, making people see you means risking discomfort. It means breaking the pattern and forcing them to notice. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. And for the first time, I knew that I wouldn't let myself fade into the background again. I had a voice, and I was finally using it.